to be fair, and you are not allowed to use this dispute as create some sort of enmity against them. And the last quote again, when the issue of jihad is there. One of the questions always, the question marks about Islam is about jihad. And wrongly jihad is translated to kill non-Muslims. I have to tell you that in one of the battles, the Prophet, when he returned to Medina, he spoke to his companions and said, we just returned from the minor jihad and you have to be prepared for the major one. He was surprised that this was the suffering and they lost some lives and they had injuries and things like that. So now it is the minor one. What will be the major one? And he clearly said that you strive and struggle against your evil desires and your inner ego. Which means that if you be a good man, if you try to purify your soul and you try to elevate your personality to be above the egoism and self-centeredness, then this is the major jihad, while that was the minor. And in other words, if we look at the history of the battles, we see 90% of the battles between Islam and non-Muslims, the idol worshippers of Hijaz mostly were self-defense and were not as offensive, they were defensive. And in all cultures and all legal systems, you have self-defense is something purely and exactly what? Acceptable. One question. You may ask me, what about Bin Laden? What about Al-Qaeda? And you have the right to ask me about that. If you ask me that, I say, what do you think about Hitler? Hitler was a Christian. Shall we say that all those people who were killed by Hitler, this is what Christianity tells him because he was Christian? Or the Crusades in 11th, 12th, and 13th century killed thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. Shall we say that this is the teaching of Christianity? We have to admit that Bin Laden, unfortunately, was made by CIA and by Americans to attack the Soviet Union and destroy it. Now, after they gave them the strength, now they think, oh, now we are attacking Islam. It is not Islam, it is not imperialism, it is nothing, it is only politics. And I didn't want to speak about politics, but I'm saying that we have to always differentiate between Islam as a doctrine, as a faith, as a belief, and the misconduct could be done by some Muslims in the name of Islam. When we refer to another issue, which is how to treat non-Muslims, we see a hadith or tradition from the Prophet of Islam in which he says that the best morals for this world and the hereafter are to forgive those who oppress you, to be reconciled with those who remove themselves from you, and to be kind to those who insult you. Exactly as we heard from Christianity, the teaching of Jesus, the saying that if you control your ill desire, your anger, and restrain your anger, and you try to stay off someone cutting off, you try to continue to be friendly to them, to forgive them. Because forgiveness is one of the most essential values of humanity, and it is recommended by both Christianity and Islam, indeed by all moral values. Right? So, by saying this, we move to another saying, and this is from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, the grandson of the Prophet, in which he says that three noble qualities belong to this world and the hereafter: forgiveness of those who oppress you, reconciliation with those who remove themselves from you, and patience with those who insult you. Now, when we talk about immunity and peace at the time of war, first of all, whenever the Prophet used to send troops to the battlefield, he was instructing them, you are not allowed to attack the women, you are not allowed to attack the civilians, children, elderly are all excluded. They are immune and no one is allowed to harm them at all. Second, you are not allowed to poison the water. Third, you are not allowed to cause any damage to ordinary people, those who do not participate in the battlefield, although you are defending yourself. And when you look at 90% of those battlefields, those battles, those fights, we see that the Prophet only was trying to defend himself because those idol worshippers, those who were not accepting this Prophet and this religion as something divine, they said, okay, we can put an end to it. And the assassination, why the Prophet Muhammad migrated from Medina to Mecca? Sorry, from Mecca to Medina. Why he returned again to Mecca? Because all the tribes decided and united to put an end to the life of the Prophet, and they thought by doing so they put an end to Islam. And the size of suffering by all progeny of the Prophet, as we see it in the followers of Ahlul Bayt, the progeny of the Prophet, that now we are commemorating the days of Ashura, Muharram, the martyrdom of the grandson of the Prophet, because he refused to submit to someone who was tired of the time. And that was the only reason he did not pay allegiance to him. Okay, let's go back to our subject. I'm trying to say that when the Prophet was sending any troops, he was advising them not to do anything against the civilians. And I made it clear in my book, Frequently Asked Questions on Islam, which was published first in 2001. I explained that no one is allowed and permitted, even at the time of the war, to cause any harm to the civilians and the innocent people. It is only in the battlefield when there is something and that is there. Otherwise, we are not initiating the war at all. The last thing is about immunity, is what we read from, again, tradition from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, the fifth Imam of Ahlul Bayt, alayhi salam, in which Imam Baqir says that during the battlefield, when the enemy comes to ask for ceasefire, even they ask for ceasefire and they were not given and granted the immunity they thought they had given, Imam Baqir says that you have to make the assumption as correct one, and it's binding on you to follow that immunity and you stop fighting with them. All these refer to one fact, that is to stick to peace, to harmony, to friendship, to the harmonious solution is the most important principle in Islam. Now, is this fair to receive all the suffering without defending yourself? No one can say that. But, as J. Smith said, that when Muslims have the faith and know that they are defending their faith and their Lord, their Creator, their God, and they are defending their principles, which are clearly mentioned in the Quran, and the tradition of the Prophet. While doing so, they have logic. They have the method of arguing in the best way. They don't have to use the sword or use whatever is the symbol of attack. That's why I suggested once that in the flag of Saudi Arabia, they would remove the swords from their flag because they always give this sort of wrong idea that Islam has lived only by swords. No. By logic, by logical argument, by good understanding, you can give a better results when you can have your principles that way. And the last word is that if you find anything in the Bible and you put a question mark on it, you have to know that you cannot read the Quran just like that. In the Quran,